this is all looking back,
Hmm.
so I didn't know at the time as it was unfolding how it was working, but it's pretty clear looking back is when I was a young athlete, surfing was my first sport of choice. And there's two types of surfing. There's free surfing and competitive surfing. And in free surfing, there's a code, and that code was don't talk about it, be about it. Put yourself in the most dangerous wave, of the day and experience that fully. And then don't check to see if anyone's looking, just know that have this internal knowing. And, it's the quote unquote hardcore approach. And I fit in that. That was cool. And I secretly kind of wanted some people to say that was cool, like, but
Yeah.
that culture was great for me. And then flip over to competitive surfing. I wanted to give it a go. And in the hardcore surfing world, it was like, those kooks over there that are competing, they're blowing it for the sport. Like that, they've got it all backwards. They're sponsored and there's stickers on their board and they're doing splashy things. And
Yeah.
I wanted to give it a go. And I should set a little more context is that when I was young, and I'm talking like in 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I wasn't exposed to the ocean for surfing. And so I tried, my parents introduced me to stick and ball sport.
Yeah.
And it was obvious, it was like this reaction I had, which was like, what are these adults screaming at us for? And what are all these rules? Who made up these rules? Like, what do you mean if you put your foot on the line, you're out? Like, shit, I got control of the ball. Let's go.
Yeah.
I'm thinking soccer right now.
Yeah.
So I didn't get these artificial rules and these kind of adults screaming at kids. And so I didn't vibe it. And that when I found action sports, skateboarding, surfing, motocross, BMX, I was like, oh, Mother Nature's the teacher. Like,
Nice.
okay, I got respect. So back to surfing, as soon as I lent my hand to competitive surfing, I was a disaster, dude. Like all these people on the beach judging me and
Yeah.
critiquing me. And
Something
like,
else, right?
I couldn't get it right. And I understand now I understand exactly what was happening, but it was this moment where it was another competitor. He was a few years older than me and he paddled by me. There was just three of us out in the water, clean conditions. It was like 8 in the morning, exactly what you would hope for, about head high waves, super glassy, great conditions.
Nice.
And he paddles by me and he says, Gervais, I surf with you every day out here. You got to stop worrying about what other people are thinking about you. And I was like, how does he know?
Yeah. Yeah. How
How
can you
does he know?
tell?
Like, yeah, how did he knew? Because he struggled with it probably, you spot it, you got it. And so from that moment, I didn't know what sports psychology was. I didn't know anything, but it kind of hit me, which was like, yeah, my body hasn't changed. My skills are the same as yesterday. The hell? It was my mind.
Hmm.
And so eventually, that was the age 15. Eventually, it set me down this path to really want to understand how the mind works because we take it everywhere we go: boardroom, living room, ocean, pitch, field, court, whatever it might be, we take it. And I wanted to get that thing dialed in because it was such a mess. And so that's how it started for me.
It's interesting. I mean, I growing up playing a lot of team sports, it's very reactionary. You get into the flow of things. And so you shake off a lot of that. And playing into some individual sports, I started playing golf late in my high school years and started getting into it. And then all of a sudden you played in the tournament, and a little bit similar to what you're saying. Now all of a sudden everyone's looking at you rather than just being on the course with your buddies. And all these internal thought, you have so much time to think rather than react and respond. And if we sort of fast forward to the early stages of your career, are there some moments that stick out with working with athletes, that were particularly challenging at that point, or that really forced you to push yourself outside of that initial comfort zone that we have when we have our training and some of the philosophies we want to lay down, but then that reality of the real world practice, presents roadblocks in itself, right?
Yeah, that's a cool question. No one's ever asked me that before. What happened early on for me was that right after my graduate training, I needed a job. And so action sports, they weren't hiring. It's a little bit off access, backcountry. So I found myself in pro sport. It was stick and ball. And so
You're back.
yeah, I'm back. And I didn't quite get it at that time. And they didn't quite, it just wasn't a great fit. So I left after about 5 years pro sport and went. Red Bull fired up a high performance program. I was fortunate enough to kind of find a spot in that emerging discipline of sports science inside of action sports. And it was great. It was super electric. It was awesome. And so to answer your question, there was a project I worked on called Red Bull Stratos. And so Felix Baumgartner was the athlete who the team built a capsule. And this was an aerospace engineered, project.
Yeah.
And they built a capsule, took them up to 130,000 feet, which is up there, and it's 100,000 feet higher than an airliner. And it's kind of the curvature of space. It's right about where you would shoot off to zero gravity into outer space and kind of be out of orbit. There's enough. That part wasn't dangerous, but it was just really high.
Yeah.
And, the project started to skid because he was developing some fear around, the whole thing. And so we did some good, honest work. So if you lose a game in stick and ball,
sucks, but
okay, it sucks,
not the end of the world.
But yeah, it's not like it was, I don't know, 200 or 1,000 years ago where the warring tribe took your family, okay, that loss, that's a bad loss. That's the worst. That's as bad as it gets. Right. So in stick and ball, it's so far from that. And then this one was somewhere in between, which is if he makes mistakes, or if we made a mistake in our preparation and training, or if somebody on the design capsule, made a mistake, like his life is, at risk. And so that's when I had a moment where I was like, I had to take that leap from science, using good science, grounded, well-tested laboratory science, and then bridge it into an environment that has not been tested in the environment that we were working in. So that bridge there's a leap that happens in there. And that's what would keep me up at night, which is taking good grounded science. One, to get your arms around that, that's a full lift in and of itself. Yeah. And then to have enough reference points and contextual understanding. And those are two, like contextual understanding and reference points are two different dynamic requirements to do good applied science. And to have those in place with a little bit of intuition to say, I think this is how it needs to fold for these circumstances, for Red Bull Stratos, for example. Yeah. And there was a moment where we didn't know. And so we had to kind of work through some of that stuff. And that was a moment where it eventually worked out to kind of get to the end of the story. He was successful and everything was good.
Put the link to the clip.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That will, it was a good experience. That leap when the stakes are that high, I think for all of us applied scientists and athletes that are trying to sort this thing out, it's like, do you really know your shit? And so that's when you can't all of a sudden zoom forward, like I got a crash course on whatever this approach is and figure it out. Like you just have to have those reference points, which takes time, the contextual understanding, and then all of that science to be able to make an innovation, a required innovation. So that was a time that was really testing.
I was going to say, I imagine it takes a lot of reading of the athlete too, and the individual in front of you to be able to nudge and adjust them as they need, because it's going to be different if there was a different athlete or extreme athlete in that situation, I imagine, right?
Yeah, the relationship is foundational for psychology. And it's like been found to be somewhere around 60 to 70% of intervention effects is based on the relationship itself, which is phenomenal. So if you come in with the best tool, but you don't have any sort of connection, it usually doesn't work out. So to your point, yes.
And it seems to explain, I mean, if we kind of pivot to medicine and chronic disease, people who go to the doctor, unfortunately, are struggling with high blood sugars, high blood pressure, prediabetes. They only get 15 minutes with their doctor, and it's difficult for the physician to even be able to take on board all these things, to build this relationship and then provide, adequate direction when we talk about, nutrition or sleep or, mindset being such key pillars that we know now are important for these kind of things.